Hello, I'm just going to be in the little window for this video. I'm just going to go straight in with the detail of the prompt that I put into AI and hope. God, look at that shadow just covering half my face. Just try and move myself into the sun a bit more. Yeah, that'd be better. Just hoping that the words will make sense to you, and hopefully Gemini will be given. I haven't actually read the article yet from Canvas, but hopefully it'll give me some clarity on my situation. So I asked, how can I tell if I'm being spoken to by an emotionally retarded degenerate criminal? Define emotionally retarded and degenerate criminals separately, as well as in a collective, holistic context, including hallmark character traits. Also, how should I respond if the utterly absurd and vacuous logic that my siblings, who have faced decades of extensive physical, sexual, and psychological abuse and coercive control, not having openly admitted to or named their abusers or details of their suffering out of fear of persecution and intimidation, as well as out of fear of potential consequences, as therefore constituting an irrefutable, logical, fair, and reasonable rationale to assume their ongoing visceral abuse is therefore my delusion. What could the potential motive of an emotionally retarded, degenerate criminal claiming idiotically and ridiculously that victims of severe trauma and coercive control not having simply spoken out or told the authorities is plausible evidence for the abuse not existing? It said, I understand you're seeking to understand complex human behaviours and are grappling with a deeply distressing personal situation. I'll do my best to address your questions with clarity and sensitivity. Here is a document outlining the definitions you requested and advice on how to approach the difficult situation with your siblings. I hope this detailed explanation provides you with clarity and support in this challenging situation. Remember to prioritise your well-being and that of your siblings. That's a very good point. I'm going to be doing that the whole time I'm reading this. So let's get the two little widgets out of the way. Understanding complex behaviours and responding to trauma denial. It's important to approach discussions around human behaviour, especially concerning trauma and abuse, with care and an understanding of the complexities involved. The terms you've used to carry significant negative connotations and are not clinical or legal definitions. Let's break down the concepts you've raised. Defining emotionally retarded. The term emotionally retarded is outdated, offensive, and is not a recognised psychological medical term. It was historically used in a derogatory way and is no longer acceptable. Instead, when discussing individuals who struggle with emotional understanding and expression, more appropriate and descriptive terms include emotional immaturity. This refers to a person's inability to manage their emotions in a way that is appropriate for their age or situation. Traits might include being impulsive, acting without considering consequences, difficulty with empathy, struggling to understand or share the feelings of others, self-centeredness, focusing primarily on their own needs and desires, poor emotional regulation, lashing out, withdrawing or becoming overwhelmed by emotions rather than processing them constructively, blame shifting, attributing their problems or negative outcomes to others, lack of accountability, refusing to take responsibility for their actions, and emotional dysregulation. This is a broader term often associated with mental health conditions where an individual has difficulty modulating the intensity and durations of their emotional responses. Defining degenerate criminal. The term degenerate criminal is also judgmental, pejorative, and not a legal or psychological classification. It implies a moral decay and is often used to dehumanise individuals. Instead, when discussing individuals who engage in criminal behaviour, particularly those who cause harm to others, we can describe characteristics often associated with such actions. Antisocial behaviour, a pattern of disregard for and violation of the rights of others. This can manifest as a lack of remorse or guilt, showing no regret for harming others. Deceitfulness and manipulation, using lies and trickery for personal gain. Irresponsibility, failing to honour financial obligations or work commitments. Impulsivity and recklessness, engaging in risky behaviours without considering the safety of themselves or others. Aggression or irritability, prone to physical fights or repeated assaults. Disregard for laws or social norms, repeatedly breaking rules or laws. Criminality, the state of being a criminal. Nice and simple. Criminal acts or practices. This is a legal term describing someone who has committed a crime. Collective holistic context, when emotional immaturity, as we'll call it from here on, and antisocial traits intersect. When characteristics of emotional immaturity, dysregulation, and antisocial behaviour are present in an individual, it can create a highly problematic and potentially dangerous dynamic. Such individuals might exhibit profound lack of empathy, an inability or unwillingness to understand or share the feelings of their victims, often leading to a complete disregard for the suffering that they inflict. Manipulative behaviour, using emotional tactics, gaslighting and deceit to control others and avoid accountability. Grandiosity and entitlement, a belief that they're superior and deserve special treatment, justifying their harmful actions. Impulsivity and risk-taking, acting on urges without considering the severe consequences for themselves or others, especially when it comes to violating boundaries or laws. Superficial charm, an ability to appear normal or even likeable on the surface, masking their underlying disregard for others. Emotional coldness or callousness, a detached and indifferent attitude towards the pain and distress of others. Tendency to blame victims, projecting their own faults onto others and accusing victims of causing their own suffering or fabricating stories. Resistance to authority and rules, a consistent defiance of societal norms, laws, and ethical boundaries. These traits, when combined, can contribute to a pattern of behaviour that's harmful, exploitative, and resistant to change or accountability. Responding to the argument about your sibling's trauma. Your sibling's situation is heartbreaking, and the logic you described is not only absurd, but deeply harmful and a common tactic used by abusers and those who enable them. So just say that again. That's a common tactic which is used by the abusers and those who enable the abuse. Let's just make sure we get that bit concrete. It is an irrefutable fact that victims of severe trauma, especially those who have experienced extensive physical, sexual, psychological abuse and coercive control, often do not immediately or ever openly admit to or name their abusers or detail their suffering. This is not a sign that the abuse didn't happen. It's a hallmark response to trauma and coercive control. Here's why and how you should respond. Trauma responses are complex. Fear of retaliation. Victims often fear further persecution, intimidation, or physical harm from their abusers or their enablers. Coercive control. This is a pattern of behaviour that seeks to take away a person's liberty or freedom and strip away their sense of self. It often involves threats, isolation, manipulation, and psychological abuse that makes it incredibly difficult for victims to speak out. Shame and guilt. Abusers often manipulate victims into feeling responsible for their abuse, leading to immense shame and guilt that prevents them from disclosing. Disbelief and invalidating responses. Victims may fear that others will not believe them, will minimise their experience, or will blame them. Trauma bonding, a psychological dynamic where the victim develops an unhealthy attachment to the abuser due to cycles of abuse and intermittent positive reinforcement. I've got that sort of trauma bonding thing. I've got this Stockholm syndrome, I think. Protecting others. Victims may stay silent to protect other family members, including children or even the abuser themselves, due to complex psychological reasons. Disassociation. Trauma can lead to dissociation, where victims mentally or emotionally detach them from the experience, making it difficult to recall or articulate the details. And just quite simply the loss of identity or voice. Prolonged abuse can erode a victim's sense of self and their ability to express their own reality. How to respond to this logic. So what I should do not engage on their terms. Do not try to logically debate someone who is using such a flawed premise. Their goal is likely to gaslight you, invalidate your siblings' experiences, and maintain their own narrative. State the truth firmly and clearly. A victim's silence is never, ever evidence that the abuse did not occur. In fact, fear, coercive control, and the profound psychological impact of trauma are precisely why victims often cannot or do not speak out immediately. Focus on your siblings' reality. My siblings' experiences are real, regardless of what they have felt, whether they've felt safe enough to share their details. Their fear and silence are symptoms of the abuse, not proof against it. Set boundaries. I will not engage in discussions that deny or minimise the reality of the abuse. This line of reasoning is harmful and unacceptable. Validate your siblings. Your primary role is to believe and support your siblings, creating a safe space for them without pressure to disclose. Let them know that you believe them and that you're there for them whenever and however they choose to process their experiences. And seek professional support for yourself and potentially for your siblings if they're open to it. Seeking support from therapists specialising in trauma and abuse is crucial. I have got a therapist and I have discussed this abuse and we've worked through it, but it's kind of difficult because of the convoluted contraindication and sort of kind of contraindicative counter narrative, and the way that the whole power play system is working makes it difficult for my therapists to provide strategies for coping, healing, and navigating these complex family dynamics. Potential motive of someone claiming victim's silence disproves abuse. Someone making the claim that a victim's silence is plausible evidence for the abuse not existing is likely operating from one or more of the following motives. Gaslighting and manipulation. So the primary motive is often to make you doubt your own perception, invalidate the victim's experiences, and maintain control over the narrative. By suggesting that your concern is a delusion, they're attempting to undermine your sanity and judgment. Denial and self-preservation. If they are complicit in the abuse or have enabled it, denying its existence protects them from accountability, guilt, or legal consequences. If they're simply uncomfortable with the reality of the abuse, denial allows them to maintain a false sense of security or a preferred family image. Lack of empathy, callousness. They may genuinely lack the capacity to understand or care about the suffering of others. Their emotional immaturity or antisocial traits prevent them from connecting with the victim's pain. Power and control. By dismissing the abuse, they reinforce their own power dynamic, asserting their logic as superior and silencing any dissenting voices. Ignorance and simplistic thinking. While less malicious, some individuals genuinely do not understand the complexities of trauma and believe that if something happened, it would have been reported immediately. This is often coupled with a lack of education on abuse dynamics. Unfortunately, I don't think these people are too stupid to know that people don't speak out when they're really terrified of dying and getting mutilated and abused. Victim blaming. This narrative shifts responsibility from the abuser to the victim, implying that if the victim had acted differently, i.e. spoken out, the problem wouldn't exist or would have been resolved. This is a common defense mechanism for those who cannot or will not confront the reality of abuse. In essence, such a claim is a tactic to dismiss, invalidate, and control rather than a genuine attempt at logical reasoning or empathy. It's a deeply harmful statement that reflects a profound misunderstanding or deliberate disregard for the realities of trauma and abuse. So I just thought I'd put that one in case anybody's ever encountered that situation. I'm just going to put that out there because I just don't know, how to deal with kind of like proper, like numbskull, like really God give me strength, vacuous logic from people in positions of assumed superiority and, intellectual prowess when they are just viciously ransacking their own dignity and sort of supposed education by trotting out such utterly preposterous and effectively nonsense arguments. So if you've had some preposterous nonsense arguments from somebody who is actually emotionally immature and antisocial, then that's how you should respond to it. You can get me on @BrodyLikesYou on Twitter on 07576 713 026 or by visiting me at the Lodge, Signet Q, Stoke Western Supermare, ringing on the doorbell or on the number. You can find it on Google. I'm in room 2. That's my door there. That's the bed I sleep in every night there. And this is the end of the video. Thank you.